Well, certainly another issue of interest to the Palestinians is Israel's planned annexation of West Bank settlements, which now has been delayed at the very least. But it does continue to stir debate, including in Washington, and especially among Democrats. Now, a small group of progressive Democrats, led by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, have called for reducing U.S. aid to Israel if it proceeds with annexation. Centrist Democrats, led by Joe Biden, oppose any such linkage. And now a dozen Senate Democrats, led by Maryland's Chris Van Hollen, are calling for a provision to be added to the National Defense Authorization Act, stipulating that aid can't be used for unilateral annexation. It's kind of a middle ground between these positions. Well, that move drew this response, though, from the pro-Israel lobby AIPAC, which said it opposes the Chris Van Hollen amendment that politicizes U.S. support for Israel's security. This amendment contradicts the Obama-Joe Biden Memorandum of Understanding and goes far beyond current law in ways that damage American interests, risk Israel's security, and make peace less likely. Well, for more, we're joined from New York, by Eric Mandel, the founder and director of MEPIN, Middle East Political and Information Network. He's also the Northeast co-chair of the Stand With Us organization. Thanks for joining us, Eric. Now, I know you briefed members of Congress on Israel and Mideast-related issues. Let me ask you, how do you read this debate going on among Democrats about the annexation issue? And is it one that Israel perhaps should be taking more into account going forward?
Well, Israel is going to have to take into account because the long-term bipartisan nature of being pro-Israel is definitely being challenged. The squad, which is led by AOC, with the ascendancy of Bernie Sanders, that progressive anti-Israel wing, in that letter you spoke about regarding AOC, there are quite a few groups in there that are part of the BDS movement, boycotting Israel. And the question I try to educate congressmen and senators about is that it technically is not an annexation. It's extending sovereignty. It may not be wise, but it's not against international law. And what we have is the hyperpolarized climate we have here is that even pro-Israel Democrats are intimidated by the AOCs and others, where Israel is put into that docket as a colonialist apartheid group, because Black Lives Matter is an ascendancy, Palestinian Lives Matter is an ascendancy. So this is a growing problem. This is not new to what's just recently happened with the racial strife in the United States. This has been growing for years.
Right. Eric, you recently had an interesting take in a piece that I read you wrote in the Jerusalem Post, saying that the annexation could benefit in some ways. I guess it was Israel's main adversary in this region, Iran. Just briefly, could you just expound on why you think that?
Well, I think what Iran is counting on is a Biden administration. It remembers in the last time Biden went as vice president with President Obama, Biden went into the JCPOA. He says, I will go back into it. And when the JCPOA was enforced just a few years ago during the Obama administration, none of the other Iranian malign activities, from human rights to missile development to being complicit in the Syrian genocide, was ever challenged, because it was always felt it would threaten the deal. And so they're counting on United States to distance themselves, to not be supportive of Israel, and may use the annexation, and especially if there are sanctions against Israel, maybe even the United States acquiescing to some of them in some form, that it may decide to be provocative and maybe finally will respond to the Israeli attacks in its war between the wars in the north.
Right. And staying on Iran for a minute, because I know you follow developments there closely, Eric. You know, this morning, Iran reporting another explosion, this time a factory south of Tehran. They're saying it was some kind of industrial accident. I think this is the fifth such incident in 2 weeks. Of course, the one gaining the most notice is that explosion at the Natanz nuclear facility. Is your sense that this is some kind of maybe new phase in the so-called shadow war between Israel and Iran, or maybe even with the involvement of the U.S. here?
Well, the United States and Israel with Stuxnet 10 years ago did work together. The goal here, it's an American national security interest, not just Israeli national security interest, to stop Iran from having a bomb. The JCPOA was something that we actually created a path towards it. A week ago, I was briefing a Democratic congressman where I showed him something to keep an eye on, which was regarding the first alleged Israeli Israeli strike, but usually we would think technologically based as opposed to maybe a bombs placed, but we don't know exactly what happened. And then within a week, 10 days, we have 5 incidents. Will Iran respond to this? We do know that Iran responded to Israel by attacking its infrastructure, its water infrastructure, and that was truly provocative. So I think this is all being ratcheted up. Remember, these are just wars by different means. And so attacking Israel by cyber, Israel attacking them by cyber, is going on all the time, but it can turn kinetic. It could in a very short order.
Right. I want to just clarify for some of our viewers the reference you made, turn kinetic. There have been suggestions that some of these explosions, especially the one at Natanz, was not a cyber attack, but actually the placing of an explosive device somehow by foreign intelligence, be it Israel or the U.S. That is the reference you're making, which would be a new development here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would definitely be a new development, but it wouldn't be surprising. Israel's #1 enemy is Iran. And the most dangerous player in the Middle East is Iran for the United States. And anybody who does not understand that really doesn't understand the Middle East. And unfortunately, there's quite a few people in Congress that don't get that. And that's what I'm on top of all the time. So could this turn into something more? Yes. Listen, Iran is looking to destabilize Jordan. It would like to encircle Israel from not only controlling Syria, Lebanon, it would like to go there. And that just explains why Israel can never give up the Jordan River Valley. Whether extending sovereignty there now is wise, it's not the point. The point is that Israel can never give it up. And strategic depth matters even in the age of missiles.
Right. It certainly does seem to be the case. Eric Mandel of Network, thank you for joining us on The Rundown.